Poem in which I only use vowels, by Paola Capo Garcia. Poem in which I have wisdom. Poem in which I have a father. Poem in which I care. Poem in which I am from another country. Poem in which I Spanish. Poem in which flowers are important. Poem in which I make pretty gestures. Poem in which I am a Decepticon. Poem in which I am a novelist. Poem in which I use trash. Poem in which I am a baby. Poem in which I swaddle. Poem in which I bathe. Poem in which I am a box. Poem in which its face is everything. Poem in which faces are everywhere. Poem in which I swear. Poem in which I take an oath. Poem in which I make a joke. Poem in which I can't
You are
move.
just listening to Poem in Which I Only Use Vowels, written and narrated by Paola Capo Garcia, a poet, translator, and educator from San Diego. With her clear voice and her penetrating words, Capo Garcia opened the poetry reading at Grace Cathedral, hosted by the Litquake Foundation. Said to embody the eclectic nature of the state, 6 Californian poets took the stage and recited their selected works. 3 men, 3 women, 4 who are not born in the United States, 1 who is openly queer, all of whom are teachers, all who write about grievances, shared and personal. All of whom found, if only for the night, their home at Grace Cathedral. It was an evening that celebrated diversity, perhaps unintentionally. No theme was announced, yet the 6 poets, representing a plurality of ages, genders, races, interests, and accents, showed that they may have more in common than not. The theme of race was touched upon by every one of the poets. Privileged or burdensome, all spoke of the heritage they carry in their bodies. In her poems, Barbara Jane Reyes speaks of Filipina girls and women who, as herself, are trying to navigate the liminality of their lives in a new home. Born in Manila and having grown up in the San Francisco Bay Area, Reyes writes, "I am tired of talking about race. These are the facts. I was born on the same island where my mother was born, where my father was born, where my mother's mother and my mother's father, where my father's mother and my father's father were born. Go back many more generations, and you will find our birthplaces are that very same island. The true point should not be why I write this, but how, in whose tongues." After a short pause, Reyes adds, "You do not get lost on an island." I can imagine that Reyes' points resonated with the others. They, too, seemed to find refuge in their mother's tongue, weaving Spanish, French, and Filipino into their poems, perhaps to express what they cannot articulate in a foreign language, and perhaps to share a secret between them and themselves, like a private joke that only they can understand. Only after I got home that night, I learned what Paola Capo Garcia meant when she kept repeating the word maricón. It means faggot in Spanish, and used as a slur in every country in Latin America. I had no idea what she was saying, and I thought that it might have been somebody's name. Marcelo Hernandez Castillo was born in Mexico and grew up in California with his family as undocumented immigrants. Castillo played with his accent, letting his Spanish R's roll free in some poems but hiding them in others. I was wondering why he was doing that. What persona was he adopting every time he changed? What difference does it make? But then again, I know what difference it makes. I know how my sentences sound different when I smooth my R's or when I let my Israeli come out. Like Castillo, I choose my R's by my audience, by my mood and by my purpose. That evening was powerful because a plurality of artists came together with a plurality of audiences to contemplate identity without an overshadowing majority. "I am not your ethnic spectacle," declared Reyes, and at that moment, she really wasn't.